Straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily. Federal authorities released their findings in the helicopter crash that killed Kobe Bryant, his daughter Gianna, and 7 others.
The probable cause of this accident was the pilot's decision to continue flight under visual flight rules into instrument meteorological conditions.
Paris Hilton shares her story of abuse and trauma, why the celebrity is trying to use her influence to bring change.
But I cannot go to sleep at night knowing that there are children that are enduring the same abuse that I and so many others went through.
Our case is based on cold, hard facts.
Opening statements in the Trump impeachment trial, our experts weigh in on the arguments presented by both sides.
Denounce the violence of the rioters.
Plus, an inside look at the witness names expected to be called during the trial of the former officer accused of murdering George Floyd. Law and Crime Daily covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law and Crime Daily. I'm Brian Buckmire along with Terri Austin. A little more than a year after a helicopter crash killed Kobe Bryant, his daughter, and 7 other people, the NTSB says the crash was preventable. Angenette Levy is here with the agency's findings.
Yeah, Brian, the investigators believe that decisions that the pilot made in flight led to this crash, and they also said that they do not believe that Kobe Bryant pressured the pilot to fly that morning.
An accident is something that is unforeseen, unpredictable, if you will. Unfortunately, this wasn't.
A sad statement from the chairman of the NTSB about the crash that killed Kobe Bryant, his daughter Gianna, and 7 others, including the pilot. Investigators said when the Sikorsky S-76B took off, there was 2.5 miles of visibility.
Even with the hindsight that we have of the weather conditions and knowing what was available to the pilot, we don't see that the weather conditions were such that should have necessarily affected the initiation of the flight.
But investigators found conditions worsened during the flight, and pilot Era Zobian flew through the clouds and became disoriented, experiencing the leans, where a pilot believes he's flying straight when he's actually in a turn. The helicopter crashed into a hillside. Investigators said Zobian didn't follow his training and had little time using instruments in the helicopter.
He didn't follow any of the recommended mitigations for entering instrument meteorological conditions, or to properly, once he had entered them, configure the aircraft by slowing down, by starting a climb, by activating the autopilot. None of that happened.
And the NTSB board found that Zobian that day likely had some type of self-induced pressure to complete this mission. They said it's like a common phenomenon that happens among pilots. They want to finish the job. They want to get through it. They said he should have actually changed course, had another plan, and actually landed that plane. The NTS board also said they believe there were some deficiencies for Island Helicopters, the company that employed the pilot, but they didn't believe that those were deliberate. They said they were more out of ignorance rather than any type of malice. Brian?
Thanks for the update on the findings, Angenette. Joining us today to break down the tragic crash is retired SWAT officer and law and crime analyst Lisa Lockwood and Terri Austin. Lisa, surprisingly to me at least, helicopters like this don't have a black box. So what goes into an investigation like this in order to get the type of report we just heard?
It's going to be completely dependent on the communication with the air traffic controller. And the last communication with the flight air traffic controller was, "I'm nearly breaking through the clouds now." So knowing full well it was very dense, and shortly after that last communication is when the crash had occurred. So they are completely dependent on that. They did have a way to know that he didn't ascend or descend in the proper fashion as well. So black box is very important, and air ambulances are equipped with this. They have that in their aircraft, in helicopters, in order to maintain and to go through terrible conditions. So I'm not certain why it's not a requirement in any kind of aircraft, especially helicopters, because we know that those crashes are a lot more frequent without having that. It's actually called a terrain awareness warning system. So I'm hoping that the FAA goes ahead and actually approves having that device in all of helicopters going forward.
Yeah, let's hope for that and a change in the policies. Terri, the pilot, the person the report is saying is at fault, passed away in the crash. So what does that mean for the Bryant's lawsuit?
You know, Vanessa Bryant's civil suit, it's a wrongful death action. It will survive, even though the NTSB said that the pilot was at fault. She's suing and she's saying the owners and the operators, they should have properly trained him. They should have properly supervised him. So essentially what she's saying is, regardless of what the pilot did during that operation, the owner and the operators are responsible because they should have shown him how to get out of that type of situation.
Exactly. Now, Angenette, some of the board members question whether there should have been 2 pilots on board, right?
Yeah, they did question that quite a bit, but they said it was perfectly legal to just have 1 pilot with this type of aircraft. But they said there are other companies that have had this type of aircraft and had 2 pilots. They say that enables a pilot who might be having some trouble to, you know, bounce what they're seeing and feeling off of another pilot and maybe get some feedback to change course.
All right, so maybe this tragedy will see a second pilot in the cockpit, and a black box as well to help. Hopefully this doesn't happen in the future. Thank you all for contributing. And now to an update on the so-called doomsday cult couple saga. Law and Crime's Jesse Weber has a new report that's raising more questions than answers.
Tammy Daybell. That's a name that should sound familiar to many of our viewers here on Law and Crime. She's the deceased former wife of Chad Daybell, the man criminally charged alongside his current wife, Lori Vallow Daybell, for their alleged roles in the discovery of Lori's dead children. Tammy died strangely just 2 weeks before Chad married Lori, and Chad originally told investigators that Tammy died in her sleep, but authorities found that to be a bit suspicious, so they exhumed her body in December 2019. Now it has been announced that an autopsy has been completed, but results are sealed as part of an ongoing investigation. Also, the prosecutor in Fremont County, where Chad and Tammy lived at the time of her death, has now taken over the investigation from the state AG's office. And what's interesting to note is that investigators didn't say anything about whether Tammy's death was a result of foul play, which raises questions about what could happen next. For Law and Crime, I'm Jesse Weber.
Thanks, Jesse. Always a crazy twist. Make sure to check him out on Prime Crime. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, Paris Hilton shares her horrifying story of suffering abuse when she was a teen. But first, we take you inside the Senate chambers for the Trump impeachment trial. Our expert analysis next. Four hours worth of opening statements kicked off the Senate impeachment trial of former President Donald Trump.
That's a high crime and misdemeanor. If that's not an impeachable offense, then there is no such thing.
House impeachment manager Jamie Raskin laying out his case, beginning with clips from the January 6th Stop the Steal rally turned riot.
We won this election, and we won it by a landslide. This was not a close election. And after this, we're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you. We're going to walk down. We're going to walk down to the Capitol.
Yeah! Let's take the Capitol. Take the Capitol. Take the Capitol. We are going to the Capitol, where our problems are.
Then Raskin got personal, telling how his daughter went with him to watch the counting of the Electoral College votes days after his son's death.
Our new chaplain got up and said a prayer for us, and we were told to put our gas masks on. And then there was a sound I will never forget, the sound of pounding on the door like a battering ram. The kids hiding under the desk, placing what they thought were their final texts and whispered phone calls to say their goodbyes. They thought they were going to die.
Raskin wrapped up by reminding the Senate of the fallen and wounded officers.
Officers ended up with head damage and brain damage. People's eyes were gouged. We cannot have presidents inciting and mobilizing mob violence against our government and our institutions because they refuse to accept the will of the people under the Constitution of the United States.
Then, Trump's lead impeachment attorney, Bruce Castor, presented the defense. Castor previously served as a district attorney outside of Philadelphia.
This trial is about about trading liberty for the security from the mob? Honestly, no. It can't be. We can't be thinking about that. We can't possibly be suggesting that we punish people for political speech in this country. And if people go and commit lawless acts as a result of their beliefs and they cross the line, they should be locked up.
Castor cutting to the chase, saying the 14th Amendment doesn't apply.
We are really here because the majority in the House of Representatives does not want to face Donald Trump as a political rival in the future. That's the real reason we're here. And that's why they have to get over the jurisdictional hurdle, which they can't get over. But that's why they have to get over that in order to get to the part of the Constitution that allows removal. So that's nobody says it that plainly, but unfortunately I have a way of speaking that way.
The trial is expected to continue at noon on Wednesday, with each side having 16 hours to present their case. After, senators will have the opportunity to ask their own questions. Witnesses could be called next week. It'll be up to the senators who serve as the jury to vote to convict or acquit Trump. Here to break down former President Trump's second impeachment trial is Lisa Lockwood and Terri Austin. Lisa, unlike the last impeachment trial, a lot of what the Senate will be bringing or will even see is video evidence and social media posts from those who stormed the Capitol and were there on January 6th. Talk to us about investigating a case so heavily focused on video footage.
Well, it's a huge win. It's a win for the FBI. It's a win for getting the people convicted who actually breached police barricades, who assaulted police officers, who stormed the Capitol, who stole property. The list goes on. And the thing about this is they freely and willingly posted publicly on social media platforms. The FBI was able to put together a very comprehensive list of photographs, pictures, and they were able to identify people who were actually involved. They're still looking for some members, and they're looking at flight records. They're doing all of their due diligence after they received all the information with photographs and created their FBI most wanted list for this particular instance. So this is a huge win for the American people in order to put these people who actually created all of this havoc and entered an establishment that's so sacred to the United States.
Now, Terri, unconstitutional. You can't remove a former president from office. They've already been voted out. First Amendment, his speech is protected. These are the arguments we're likely to hear. Do you see them working during this impeachment process?
Well, I think that the House managers made the stronger argument. Their form and their substance. Lisa mentioned the video. The fact that they were juxtaposing the actions of the individuals to the words of Trump, I think, was very impactful. And they made great arguments. There's no question that from a precedent standpoint, you can impeach someone who's left office. So I absolutely think their arguments are going to prevail at the end of the day.
Now, let me just correct myself, removal process, but at the end of the day, it's a numbers game. Will 17 Republicans vote against Donald Trump, or former President Donald Trump, I apologize. We'll have to watch to see. Coming up on Law and Crime Daily, why prosecutors in the George Floyd case want to tack on another charge to the ex-cops. Plus, Paris Hilton goes before the Utah Senate, her call to denounce child abuse and bring change in the troubled teen industry. Celebrity Paris Hilton took to Utah State Senate to advocate for the regulation of the troubled teen industry after she was abused when she was 16 years old.
For the past 20 years, I've had a recurring nightmare where I'm kidnapped in the middle of the night by two strangers, strip searched and locked in a facility. I wish I could tell you that this haunting nightmare was just a dream, but it is not. When I was 16, two transporters woke me up in the middle of the night with handcuffs. They asked me if I wanted to go the easy way or the hard way. They carried me out of my home as I screamed at the top of my lungs for my parents' help. I was taken to the airport and separated from everything and everyone I knew and loved. Provo Canyon School was my final stop. I was given clothes with the number on the tag. I was no longer Paris. I was only number 127. I was verbally, mentally, and physically abused on a daily basis. I was cut off from the outside world and stripped of all of my human rights. I was not allowed to be myself, hold my own opinions, or even speak. Without a diagnosis, I was forced to consume medication that made me feel numb and exhausted. I didn't breathe fresh air or see the sunlight for 11 months. There was zero privacy. Every time I would use the bathroom or take a shower, it was monitored. At 16 years old, as a child, I felt their piercing eyes staring at my naked body. I was just a kid and felt violated every single day.
Back for analysis is retired SWAT officer Lisa Lockwood and co-host Terri Austin. Lisa, you've investigated cases like this. You've helped bring justice for young women who have gone through this. When you hear Paris Hilton's words, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, knowingly that she was forced into that environment. We've heard of these programs before, Scared Straight, teen boot camps. This is in essence a way to eradicate poor behavior or bad conduct, or people who have gotten arrested or addicted to drugs and that sort of thing. But what she endured was far beyond the scope of any means to help correct her behavior, whatever it was. Physical, verbal, and mental abuse all came together. She was not allowed to go outside for 11 months, no fresh air whatsoever, and as she mentioned, strip search on a regular basis. So fortunately, they have brought light to this, and they will be making changes, I believe, because of her and a lot of other celebrities coming forward and discussing their kind of false imprisonment for something that had to do with a mental disorder.
Now, Terri, similar question. Do you think that these words could create change in Utah, if not maybe the entire country?
Absolutely. Whenever you have a spokesperson like Paris Hilton coming to a committee hearing like that, it does sway the individuals who are listening to her words. You know, she's talking about the mental and physical abuse, and the bill is going to require more government oversight of these residential treatment centers, and it's going to require that they document when they use restraints. So I think it was helpful.
I do as well. When we come back, breaking down the first trial in the George Floyd case, the witness list, the jury instructions, Derek Chauvin's defense, all ahead. The first trial of a former Minneapolis police officer for the death of George Floyd is set to begin in just a month, and both sides are preparing their cases. Derek Chauvin is facing charges of second-degree unintentional murder and second-degree manslaughter. Chauvin's defense won their bid to drop the charge of third-degree manslaughter. But prosecutors are asking a judge to reinstate it after an appeals court upheld the same charge for former Minneapolis cop Mohammed Noor. Prosecutors also submitted a witness list of more than 300 names, including the 3 other officers charged in Floyd's murder. They're slated to go to trial separately this summer. The defense is naming more than 200 of their own witnesses, including Hennepin County prosecutors removed from the case by a judge. The case is being tried by the Minnesota Attorney General, Keith Ellison's office.
A long process toward justice.
The defense also submitted a list of 37 requests, including not allowing Chauvin to be referred to as a defendant at trial, not allowing Floyd to be referred to as a victim, or likening his death to Jesus, and limiting testimony about medical examinations to only those performed by the county coroner. Remember, Floyd's family hired Dr. Michael Bodden to conduct an independent examination.
The cause of death, in my opinion, is asphyxia due to compression of the neck, which can interfere with blood flow and oxygen going to the brain.
Those findings differ from Hennepin County medical examiner, who ruled Floyd's death was a homicide caused by a cardiopulmonary arrest while being restrained by law enforcement.
The officers killed him based on a knee to his neck for almost 9 minutes and 2 knees on his back, compressing his lungs. The ambulance was his hearse.
Governor Tim Walz is authorizing the Minnesota National Guard to help provide security during the trial, a move that could cost millions. Jury selection is scheduled to begin on March 8th. Opening statements are expected March 29th. Here one last time to tell you what could be coming for the final motions in the George Floyd trial are Lisa Lockwood and Terri Austin. Lisa, you've testified in countless cases. Are these requests normal, or do you think they are unique due to the magnitude of this case, and why?
It is an exorbitant number. We looked at 300 from the prosecution side and 200 from the defense side. You're going to be looking at former employees. You're going to be looking at character witnesses, as well as the co-defendants and the people who are there actually filming the video. So the list goes on and on, that they want to be able to have a perspective from every ering. Former bad acts, we talked about that, allowing that information coming forward. Only one would be allowed for Chauvin, and you're not going to be able to see anything that happened prior to with George Floyd's arrests and him resisting in the past. So I have never seen an amount this high as far as witnesses, but this case is extremely important for change in law enforcement.
Now, Terry, I looked at some of these, and even by my standards, I know I file a lot of motions before trial, but I'm questioning some of them. Now, for you, are these proper, ridiculous, or strategic? What do you make of these requests by both sides?
You know, I think it's interesting. This is a high-profile case, so I do think there will be a lot of strategic maneuvering here. And all of the, people involved want to make sure that they sort out any issues prior to trial. So while it might seem ludicrous, I think it makes sense to try to resolve, whether or not you're going to call the defendant.
All right, thank you both, and thank you for joining us here at Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.